A drone filmed something running at 60 mph through dense woods in England. It was running on two legs. Pluckley, Kent. The village has a reputation. The Guinness Book of Records once called it the most haunted village in England. 12 named ghosts, stories going back centuries. A forest known locally as Screaming Woods, named for the sounds people hear there at night. For years, the screams were dismissed as urban legend, pranksters, foxes, the wind, the usual rural folklore bullshit. Then the drones came in. Between 2020 and 2025, amateur paranormal investigators started flying high-end thermal cameras over the forest at night. The kind of cameras the military uses. The kind that pick up human body heat through trees, through fog, through fucking anything. On one of the loudest nights, a group of investigators caught it on camera. The screams were coming from deep in the woods. They launched the drone. The thermal feed showed something moving, a white, hot human shape, running through trees at a speed that didn't make no sense. The drone tracked it for 30 seconds before the shape vanished. The footage was analysed by aviation and forensic experts. The shape on the thermal camera was clearly humanoid, 2 legs, 2 arms, head, torso, running in an upright posture. The speed, however, was inhuman. The investigators measured the shape's movement against the GPS data from the drone. The shape was travelling at roughly 60 miles per hour. Fastest human ever recorded, Usain Bolt, tops out around 27 miles per hour on a flat track. This thing was doing more than double that through dense forest at night around trees over fallen logs of grass ground covered in roots and undergrowth. A human running at that speed through that terrain would die. Their bones would shatter on the first tree. Their tendons would snap on the first root. There's no biological way to do what the thermal camera saw. And then the shape simply ceased to exist. It didn't run out of frame. It didn't hide behind a tree. It dissolved. The heat signature scattered into a cloud of cold air on the camera. Thermal contrast vanished. Where there had been a glowing human shape, there was nothing but ambient forest temperature. Obviously, a human body can't just disappear. A human body holds heat for hours even after death. Even a corpse stays warm. Even a person hiding behind a tree still shows a partial signature. The thing didn't die, it fucking evaporated. Pluckley village has folklore going back to the 1600s. A highwayman murdered in the woods. A woman who threw herself off a watchtower. A schoolmaster who hanged himself in the forest. A gypsy who burned to death in a cart. Each ghost has a name. Each has a story. The Screaming Woods aren't named after a person, they're named after the sound. A high, drawn-out human scream that comes from the inside of the trees at night. The scream has been reported since at least the 1800s. It always comes from a different direction. It never repeats from the same spot twice in one night. After the drone footage, the local paranormal community went into overdrive. More drones were sent in. More cameras, multiple groups working together, set up perimeter recording. Every drone caught something. The shapes were always human, always fast, always vanished into cold air when approached. One drone equipped with audio recorded the stream up close. The frequency analysis online, it don't match a fox, it don't match a barn owl, it don't match any known animal in the British Isles, it matches a human voice in extreme fucking pain, coming from a body that doesn't exist. The Pluckley screams continue. The drone footage continues to be captured. The official explanation remains foxes and fucking pranksters. Despite the thermal data, despite the speed measurements, despite the disappearing heat signatures, some villagers have stopped going into the woods at all. Others say it's harmless. The screams have always been there. The screams will always be there. But a heat signature doesn't dissolve. Heat doesn't just vanish. The laws of thermodynamics say energy has to go somewhere. If a body's worth of warmth disappears on a drone camera, that warmth went somewhere we can't see, somewhere our cameras can't follow. Screaming Woods of Pluckley aren't a story, they're a place. You can drive to them, you can walk through them in daylight. Just don't go there after dark.
The Hat Man was standing right beside my bed at 15, and I watched him reach his bony fingers toward my sleeping 11-year-old cousin. Hey there, welcome back to Pink Hair Ain't Scared. I'm Marge, your spooky drag storyteller. Today's story comes from the person who made this wig. B cosplays. Let's dive in. When I was around 15 years old, my little cousin Belle, who was 11 at the time, she came to stay with me for the summer. This was a normal thing, since we lived far away from each other and spent summers together as often as we could. The only difference was that my family and I were in a new home. The new house was big, 2 stories with a huge cathedral ceiling. It was like an old rustic church, located in the middle of nowhere, at least 30 minutes from any town. I had some odd experiences anytime I was home alone in this new, much larger house. Lights flickering, ceiling fans randomly stopping, TVs turning on and off at random, that kind of thing. I did my best to think nothing of it, feeling if I gave it attention, it might get worse. Maybe I was just imagining things. When Belle came to visit, I started feeling really anxious. Being inside the house felt off, like a thick and heavy presence was following us no matter where we went. The random events like the flickering lights and the TVs turning on and off stopped, but I couldn't shake this feeling of impending doom creeping up on me. My chest felt tight. I felt nauseated, and I was just plain scared to be in my room alone. I did my best to keep my anxiety in check, since my cousin was younger than me and I didn't want to frighten her. So I kept all of this to myself and worked hard to make sure we had a great time together, despite my fears. One night, when it was time to go to bed, Belle and I said our goodnights and got into my bed to go to sleep. My bed was flush against one wall, and I was on the inside, closest to the wall, while she lay on the outside. She fell asleep instantly, but I couldn't relax. My anxiety was extremely high, and I tossed and turned for hours before finally getting to that point where you're about half asleep, but not quite there. I suddenly had this intense feeling that I needed to open my eyes, that we were not alone in that room anymore. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't hear any noises to indicate that we had any intruders. My dogs were quiet, and the house was completely silent. Still, I opened my eyes slowly, looking to my right, where Belle was asleep. When I looked over, my eyes rested upon what nightmares are truly made of. There he was, the Hat Man, the one everyone talks about when telling spooky stories. But this time, I was really seeing him in my actual bedroom. He was right there, right next to my bed, tall, shadowy, and slender. And just like the stories say, he had a tall black top hat on his head. He was cloaked in darkness. The details of his face were difficult to make out, but the presence alone was heavy enough to be felt physically, and it was ominous and horrific. I remember feeling sheer panic, but also an intense need to protect Belle. I could see his outstretched hand, long and bony fingers with sharp nails reaching for Belle. Without a second thought, I grabbed her and rolled her over so that I was now on the outside part of the bed. All I knew was that I would protect her from this entity no matter what. She didn't even wake up or stir. I remember that horrifying feeling you have in dreams where you want to scream but you can't make any noise. That exact sensation came over me, but I managed to squeak out a quiet but firm, "Get away from us." I was shaking as I turned briefly to check on Belle, and she was still out like a light. When I turned back around, the Hat Man was gone. My body was shaking, and my heart was pounding so fast it felt painful. I was so scared, sweaty and clammy, and I couldn't catch my breath. I was desperate for help, but I felt like if I told my family, they'd never believe me. I didn't know what to do, so I lay there, keeping an eye on Belle until I eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I was still scared. My family left for work early, as my father had an early hospital shift and my mom had early clients at the salon. I worked at the salon part-time as well, learning hair, folding towels, and answering the phone. It was time to get ready to go to work. The events of the night before were still bothering me, and I was even more on edge than usual. I tried not to think about it, and went into my parents' bathroom to do my makeup for work. Then I heard a noise. It wasn't Belle, since she was still sleeping. It was a low growl, along with some shuffling. My first thought was that maybe it was the dogs, but then I remembered I had let them out to the kennel to go potty while I got ready. There was no possible way they could get out of the kennel and back inside alone. I knew I needed to check it out, but I was terrified. It was just me and Belle, and I knew as the older one, I had to be the bravest to keep her safe from any potential danger. So I finally gained the courage to peek around the corner. Near the front door, we had a long hallway with a floral runner rug. In that long hallway, I saw a black furry creature about the size of a large German shepherd. It looked at me and growled again, and I moved away quickly, hiding behind the stairs and panicking. Being in the mountains of Colorado, I almost thought it was a bear. But that couldn't be possible. How could it have gotten inside? After a moment, everything fell quiet. I finally mustered up the courage to check once more. I looked again, slowly peeking around the corner and being as quiet as I could, and it was gone. The house was silent. The runner rug in the doorway was all bunched up, as if someone or something had moved quickly and caused it to roll up. I looked everywhere, but there was no sign of the creature, the Hat Man, or anything else. I was so terrified that I took my makeup with me and decided to get ready at the salon and leave the house as fast as possible. I woke Belle up, and we left out the back door. I was too afraid to cross the front door for fear that the creature would be there. The feeling of doom slowly lifted off my shoulders the closer we got to town, and I still wasn't sure if I would tell anyone what happened. I kept it to myself and never told a soul. Do you have a scary story you'd like to send in? My email is down below. Hope to hear from you soon, and stay tuned for another scary story.
Here is a little story time of a ghost that I saw while I was a kid. And by a kid, I mean like I was in middle school, but it was still like 10 years ago. So I guess backstory is I go to my old friend's house, and her house always like had energy in it. When we'd be sitting on the couch, literally somehow the front door would open by itself. Like I didn't understand. I didn't know if it was the wind doing it or what. Her front door would open by itself, and there'd be noises from her closet, and like it just felt weird sometimes. So one day I was like playing in the house with her and her dog, like running around, and we were playing hide and seek, and the spot that I hid in, I decide something tells me to turn around and look behind me, and for some reason, you want to know what I saw? There was the figure of a black, like a black shadow of a man walking towards me, and I swear he had a hat on. I don't know what kind of hat, but I just saw the outline of a hat. It was a black shadow, and I was like, and like I don't know, my brain just told me to turn around. So when I turned around and I saw him, I didn't have any other thought but to run away from him. So I ran out of that room to my friend, and I told her that what I just saw in her freaking living room, because what was that? And before that's even happened, we'd hear noises in her closet like literally around 3 a.m. when we were trying to sleep. We'd be trying to sleep, and then I slept closer to the closet because even she knows about it, but like it's her house, I'm being her friend, I wanna, like, you know. But those noises, they would stop when we would pause the TV to try to listen to them. Like, I don't know what we were dealing with, but that was insane. And I do have to say, we were kind of like not smart sometimes and used, a Ouija board. And let me just say, when the planchette starts moving and you're not moving it, that's a feeling I don't know how to describe. The way that it courses through your body, the adrenaline when it just starts moving. And then back then there was a thing called the Charlie challenge. Don't know if anybody remembers it. I did that with her as well. We were outside her house though while we did this one. And we made sure it wasn't windy, because the pencils are supposed to yes and no, but it wasn't windy, and they literally started moving to yes and no when we were asking questions. Like, I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. But whenever her and I contacted them, and if one actually did respond to us, we chickened out so fast, and we'd always say goodbye on the Ouija board, because again, you can't say goodbye or you can't end it without saying goodbye, because then they're still there basically. And then for the freaking Charlie, I think you had to break the pencils or burn the paper or something. I don't know. Don't quote me. I don't remember that much. It was 10 years ago. But guys, ever since then, essentially, I have just tried to stay away from things like that, like the Ouija board, the games. I'm still spiritual. I still know that there's ghosts and energies around. I don't think I want to see them anymore. I saw that one that was scary. I think he's the Hat Man. That is what everyone calls him. I'm okay.
The Appalachian Trail has always represented freedom, and for millions of hikers, it's one of those places where just the rhythm of everyday life just disappears within the foothills, and the quiet confidence that tomorrow's sunrise will always find you somewhere new. Stretching for more than 2,000 miles through Georgia to Maine, this trail has been known as one of the safest places a person can just disappear. Not from society forever, but, from deadlines, traffic, and just the constant pressures of modern life that we've all become accustomed to. In the summer of 1990, two young hikers believed that they were embarking on a journey of just that. Instead, their dream would end in one of the most shocking Appalachian Trail crimes in history. When people imagine danger in the Appalachian Mountains, their brain usually goes straight to bears or mountain lions or, nature itself, or just the possibility of becoming hopelessly lost in a sea of trees and mountains. Very few people go out there expecting to see another person. Honestly, the trail has always kind of just carried this unspoken rule of trust. Campers will share campsites with other campers whom they've never met before. It's a community based on the assumption that everybody out there is out there for one purpose only, and that would be to experience the mountains. That assumption is exactly what makes the murder of Molly LaRue and Jeff Hood so deeply disturbing. They did not simply take two young lives. They shattered a sense of security that countless hikers had carried with them for decades. But before we get into what happened, it is very important to know who Molly and Jeff were as people, because reducing them to just victims would overlook the entire lives that they built for themselves. They were not thrill seekers or inexperienced campers just looking to have a good time. They were not wandering into the wilderness unprepared. They were young, intelligent, ambitious young individuals with futures that stretched beyond the horizon of the trail they were walking. Molly LaRue was an artist with an adventurous personality, and she had one of those infectious curiosities about the world around her. Friends described her as thoughtful, creative, and endlessly fascinated by nature, which sounds very much like myself. And Jeff Hood shared that same appreciation for the outdoors. The two had graduated college and were preparing for graduate school. But before stepping into the next major part of their life, they decided to do what other people only dream of doing. They would spend the entire summer hiking the Appalachian Trail together. living simply, carrying all of their belongings on their back, experiencing that kind of freedom that only a months-long journey in the wilderness could give you. Their hike was never meant to be an escape. It was meant to be a form of celebration. It was celebrating everything that they had accomplished and everything that they would accomplish in the future ahead. They documented their journey through journal entries, photographs, and conversations that they had with fellow hikers along the way. Like many thru hikers, they became very familiar with other faces of other thru hikers, and they quickly became part of that community. People remembered them as friendly, optimistic, and genuinely excited about every mile that they covered. As the weeks passed, the couple made steady progress through Pennsylvania. This is a section of the Appalachian Trail that is known for being rocky. Veterans of the Appalachian Trail generally like to make a joke about how this area is where boots fall apart and ankles are put to the test. Yet, despite the physical demands of this portion of the trail, it is actually the most social part of the trail as well. Shelters, small rail towns, and frequent encounters with other hikers. So it kind of gives this expectation that this area is a place of familiar faces. And that familiarity is what made this disappearance so noticeable. Towards the end of July in 1990, other hikers began to realize that they had not seen Molly and Jeff in places that they were supposed to see them, or, that they were expected to be going along the same route that they were going on. And at first, nobody panicked. Delays happen constantly on a trail this long and this intense. Someone might decide to spend an extra day in town washing their clothes, or even recovering from sore muscles. Sometimes people can get caught up in bad weather and they like to sit and wait it out. Sometimes hikers just slow their pace, and it rarely means that something is wrong. But as the days passed, concern began replacing optimism. Family members, friends, and fellow hikers alike started asking the question, where is Molly and Jeff? Search efforts soon began on the portion of the trail where they were last seen. Volunteers, friends, and even hikers were combing the Pennsylvania woods, following narrow footpaths. There were no new journal entries, no fresh sightings from other hikers, and no phone calls to home. And then came the discovery that turned this investigation from a missing persons case to a homicide investigation. Near the Thelma Marks shelter, they found Molly and Jeff. Both had been killed in an act that honestly shocked everybody. And honestly, it was a huge, devastating blow to the hiking community. The location itself added another layer of heartbreak because those shelters are out there for safety. They are supposed to represent safety. These are places where strangers can become friends overnight, where stories are shared around camp stoves, where meals are made together with strangers. It's like everyone comes together as a community in these places. Honestly, to realize that such an unimaginable crime has taken place in such a place where, people have built this trust and this form of community, it honestly fundamentally changed the way that people look at the Appalachian Trail. News of these murders spread quickly, not only through Pennsylvania, but through the entire hiking community, which, like I said, this trail goes on through many states. This community is very large. For many longtime backpackers, this honestly felt almost impossible to process. The Appalachian Trail had sure seen disappearances, accidents, and isolated crimes before, but this was different. Investigators immediately faced an enormous challenge. Unlike a crime that was committed within a city, this crime was committed in the literal middle of the wilderness, the middle of basically nowhere, meaning there were no surveillance footage, no nearby businesses, and there's very little population out there, so very little room for witnesses. Everyone who passed through that section of the trail was always moving, meaning potential witnesses could be miles and miles away from the scene by now. So how are we going to find them for information, right? And who do we even ask? Because many people come through this trail, right? So the way that they were found by the two hikers was Jeff was in his head multiple times, several times, and Molly was found stabbed to death multiple times. Things were stolen from Jeff. But despite what I said earlier about not knowing who to ask, there were a few fellow hikers who came forward when news of the investigation spread. They came forward and gave a description of a man who that they thought did not look like a fellow hiker. Like I said, this is a very large community and it's a very personalized community. Like everybody knows everybody, it's large, but it's like a family. So through hikers were able to recognize that this guy was not an avid hiker. And they said that he didn't look like a hiker due to the fact that he was carrying 2 gym bags. One of Jeff's bags was found at the scene, and the other bag was found about 7 miles from the scene with a broken handle. This guy was described as a white male, very unkempt, with a beard and long brown, disgusting hair, between 5'8" and 5'10". A short murderer. I almost said short king. He's not a king. And he also had a very thin build. So he was short, ugly, and gangly. Basically, he's very rough looking and very unkempt, like I said, gross. He may also have had a southern accent and may have also been wearing part of the victim's clothes, which would be Jeff. Even with all of that information, they never found who this perpetrator was. There have since been other murders and crazy, scary, horrifying tragedies that have happened along this trail. Not everything within this forest has to do with cryptids, although that is a large part of why this forest is unnerving, to say the least. I guess if you're gonna go out there, bring protection. Always bring protection when you're going out into the wilderness, honestly. Don't trust anybody. I hate to say that because you feel like you want to trust those in the community that you are feeling the safest in, but you truthfully can't. You really can't. You don't know the intentions of people. You don't know what somebody has thoughts in their mind. And honestly, in this forest range, there are people who are referred to as the feral people. I have done a video on the feral people before.
Hey Toxins, y'all, I got another story submission, and this one genuinely made the hairs on my arm stand up. I was reading this like, what? And if you're new here, welcome back to my page where I don't spill tea, I brew coffee. And not everything that I serve is gonna be safe. So, this story was submitted by a woman, I'll call her Melissa. She wrote, Kofi, please don't use my real name. My family still lives there, and every time I bring this up, they tell me to just leave it alone. Melissa said that this happened about when she was 19 years old, and her grandmother lived on the outskirts of a tiny farming town where the nearest neighbor was like a mile away. She said once the sun went down, she said the roads became completely empty, and one evening, her grandmother asked her to drive into town to grab some milk and some bread. She said about 10 minutes down the road, she saw an older woman just standing beside the barbed wire fence. She said the lady was barefoot. She was wearing like an old faded blue dress, just staring at the road. Melissa said she slowed down just a little bit, and then like the woman smiled and waved. And then she asked, can she give her a ride into town? Melissa said she apologized to the lady and told her that she couldn't because she didn't know her. She said the woman's smile slowly disappeared, and Melissa said she just drove away. She said she glanced back into her rearview mirror, but the woman was still standing there watching her leave. And she said about 20 minutes later, she pulled into like the only gas station that was in town. She said she grabbed her groceries and then she headed towards the register. Then she said she froze, y'all. She said because standing beside the coffee machine was the same woman. The same woman, y'all. She said the same blue dress, same bare feet, same smile. She said her stomach dropped. Mine would have been in my asshole. I ain't even gonna lie, y'all. Anyways, she said there was no way that she could have walked there. And there wasn't like another car outside. She said she didn't pass anyone on the road when she was on her way there. And she said the woman slowly looked up and locked eyes with her. Bitch, no. And she said she quietly said, I wondered if you recognized me. Melissa said she didn't answer. She said she dropped that basket she was holding and she walked straight out the store. She said she didn't even look back, y'all. I wouldn't have looked over my shoulder neither, because for what? She said the next morning she told her grandmother everything. And instead of her grandmother calling her crazy, she said her grandmother quietly closed every curtain in the house. And then she said, did she ask you for a ride? And Melissa said she whispered, yeah, she did, Grandma. She said her grandmother nodded. And like she already knew what was going on. And then she just said something that Melissa said she would never, ever forget. She said, some things don't need your permission to follow you, but they do need your permission to come inside. Melissa said she kind of like laughed at that statement a little bit, like nervously, like, yeah, okay, type of shit. But she said 3 nights later, around like 2:30 in the morning, she said someone had knocked on her grandmother's front door. She said it was like 3 like slow knocks or whatever. And she said her grandmother immediately turned off every light in the house. And Melissa said she looked through the window, and then standing on the porch, she said it was her cousin Ashley. Melissa said she was reaching for the doorknob, and her grandmother grabbed her by the wrist so hard that it fucking hurt, y'all. She said she whispered, "Don't you open that door." And Melissa said, "But that's Ashley." Her grandmother shook her head and said, "No, it only looks like Ashley." She said the knocking had stopped eventually. Then she said a voice came through the front door, and she said it sounded exactly like Ashley. And the voice was saying, "Grandma, it's cold. Please let me in." And Melissa said she started crying because she knew that voice. She grew up with that voice. And her grandmother never moved. Never fucking moved, y'all. She said she just sat there in silence. She said almost a full minute went by, and she said then the voice changed. She said it became deeper, y'all. She said almost like several people was trying to speak at once. And she said then, oh, I got chills, y'all. Then everything went quiet. She said completely quiet. And she said the next morning Ashley had called, and she said she had been at work all night. She had never gone anywhere near the house. Melissa said she didn't know what to expect. And she ended the email with one sentence that been living like rent free in my head ever since, y'all. She said whatever stood on that porch knew exactly who we loved. It didn't know how to be human long enough to convince us, but it knew. Now, tell me, if someone you love knocked on your door, but something deep inside you told you not to answer, would you trust your eyes or would you trust your guts? Because I'm thinking that was a shapeshifter. That's what I think. What y'all think that was? Anyways, I'm serving in black today, and I hope y'all drink from a clean source. And don't forget, 2026 mindset is lock them gates. I love y'all, and I'll see you in the next video. And guess what? Submit here.
About 8 years ago, I was taking selfies and I was testing out the lighting in front of a window in my living room. I was about to delete the photo because my face looked too bright, but then I noticed something in between a lock of my hair. The person in red was my younger brother, who had just been sitting down on the armchair behind me. I had asked him to leave so that I could take photos, but someone, or something else, wanted to stay. This picture was taken a long time ago. My fiance's childhood home was always extremely creepy and had frequent paranormal things happening. From what I've heard, between the 1920s and the 1940s, her entire block was burnt down and several people passed away. My fiance and her family had experiences all throughout her childhood, and this photo is the only proof I have. She appears to be wearing much older clothing, and my fiance's whole family has seen this little girl in their house often. I recently started a job at a women's recovery center. One night, as I was working the overnight shift, I went to go sit outside, just outside of the office. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something moving at the nursery. I quickly took out my phone and I took a picture and then went back into the office. When I looked at the picture again, I saw this shadow person looking right at the camera. I showed some of my coworkers and they would tell me stories about how they would get really negative vibes from the nursery. Some clients also say that they see somebody peeking through the nursery windows when they know there's nobody in there.
I wanted to share some more stories about growing up in a haunted house. I had just gotten out of the hospital and I was on blood thinners, so I was very careful not to get any cuts or anything like that because while on blood thinners it can cause you to bleed really bad, even just like a little cut. I got in the shower and I think I was in there for like 2-3 minutes and my shin started burning really bad. I looked down at my leg and there's 3 slash marks, and of course I'm bleeding like insanely. It looked like 3 thin cat claw marks, and I don't have any cats. And I was bleeding so much before I got in the shower. I would have seen that, and nothing. So I don't know what that one was. I always felt like I was going crazy, hearing knocks, seeing things out of the corner of my eye, things getting misplaced. Like I know that nobody touched it and I did not move it, and it's like sitting in the middle of the floor. I was using the bathroom and this postcard envelope thing slid under the door, but I just thought it was my brother screwing around because he was always doing something like that. It didn't come all the way under, so it was halfway, like through the other side. So I took my foot and I slid it back under. That envelope slides right back into the bathroom. So I go out to find my brother, and he's not there. Nobody's home. Actually, they hadn't been home for like 30 minutes. So that was scary as hell, and I left. I did not stay home. Things really started amping up, and I think it was because I was giving such a reaction, and I was really scared, and it was really hard not to have a reaction and to ignore it, and I wasn't ignoring it, so it was just getting worse. I had a friend over, and we were just hanging out in my room listening to music. I had the speaker on, and I had it on top of the dresser. My dog kept staring at the ceiling, and as soon as she started to growl, that speaker flew off of the dresser. We sat there and tried to figure out, maybe the music was so loud that the speaker kind of vibrated off of the dresser, but there was just no way. I mean, it flew across the room. This room isn't very big, but it flew across it, so there was just no way.
Welcome to the Midnight Sesh. We have had some flavors. Now let's get into the story. Something has been going on in my childhood bedroom for a few years now. I've always felt sensitive to energies or presences. My family is kind of the same way. A lot of us have had strange experiences, so about 2 years ago, I started hearing a buzzing or tapping sound from the left side of my window. It was always in the exact same spot. It sounded like something rattling inside the wall, and it only happens during the daytime. Around the same time, I developed a very intense feeling of being watched at night, especially when I turned my back to the window. I always felt like whatever this presence is, it was lurking right outside the window, but its face was inches away from my bed, like it pushed all the way up against the wall. The feeling is always the same, like it's watching and observing. Sometimes I get so terrified, I turn back around, and I have to hype myself up for several minutes before I'm able to look, close the window, and lock it. Then I shut the blinds as quickly as possible. This is a complete shift from how I used to be. I used to sleep with the blinds open and the windows cracked. Now I can't even relax if the blinds are slightly open. And this feeling and activity only happens in this room. Later that night, between 12:30 and 3 a.m., I could hear heavy breathing from under the bed. I panicked and called my sister to check. She didn't see anything, and when I checked again myself, there was nothing there. Since then, I occasionally still hear muffled breathing, but now it comes from the wall and window area behind my head. The same night, I heard the breathing under my bed. My twin sister told me she'd been watching one of the Conjuring movies. That psyched me out because I've always asked my family not to watch those in the house since they're based on true stories, and I don't want to risk inviting anything in. And this isn't the first time something weird has happened after one of those films. Years ago, I heard scratching and tapping inside the walls between my room and my older sister's. Months later, my sister said she heard the same noise and told me they started right after she saw the Conjuring movie. So the fact that another family member was watching one on the same night when I heard the breathing under my bed honestly made everything feel worse. So I guess I just want insight on whether or not this could be a spirit or if I'm indulging my anxieties in extreme paranoia. I think you should get a new room and find someone to do a cleanse on your whole family, because definitely some shit's up there. Let me know your thoughts down below. Go ahead and like, follow, comment, and share. I love you as always. Bye.
He was convinced convinced it was just a reflection until he found out the hotel was supposedly haunted. The person who shared this story wanted to remain anonymous, so we are going to call him Tyler. Back in 2013, Tyler was traveling with his family from Tennessee to New York when they stopped for the night at the Omni Grove Park Inn in North Carolina. He's always enjoyed paranormal stories, but he's also been skeptical. He'd never experienced anything that made him believe ghosts were real. The next morning, he and his sibling grabbed breakfast before getting back on the road. They found a quiet table overlooking the hotel's massive golf course. When his sibling went back to the room to grab something they forgot, Tyler sat alone staring out the window. That's when he noticed someone walking across the golf course. It looked like a middle-aged man wearing an unbuttoned white shirt, flowing in the breeze, but something wasn't right. The figure looked almost transparent, more like a hologram than a person. Tyler kept moving his head, convinced it had to be a reflection in the glass, but there was nothing behind him that could have created it. The TV overhead was off, no one was nearby, and no one on the course looked anything like the figure. Even stranger, he couldn't make out the man's legs. He watched as the figure continued walking away. Then, a pale rod-like shape swept across it, almost like a windshield wiper, and the figure simply disappeared. Not faded, not walked away, just gone. Tyler convinced himself that there had to be a logical explanation, maybe some strange trick of the light, so he never mentioned it to anyone. Later that day, as they were driving away, Tyler overheard his parents talking to a family friend on the phone. When they mentioned staying at the Grove Park Inn, the friend immediately responded that the hotel had a reputation for being haunted. His parents were shocked. Tyler slowly took off his headphones and said, I think I might have had an experience. To this day, he still doesn't know what he saw that morning. He only knows he's never found an explanation that makes more sense than what his own eyes witnessed. So I recently spent some time in Asheville, and the hotel is not shy about its history. There's information all over the place about famous people who stayed there, including many presidents, and there's even information about the Lady in Pink. So what we do know is the Pink Lady is the most famous ghost of the Omni Grove Park Inn in Asheville, North Carolina. She was a socialite in the 1920s who stayed as a guest in room 545. She tragically fell 2 stories from her balcony down into the hard slate floor of the Palm Court where she perished. It is unknown the reason behind the fall. But the person Tyler described was clearly a man. So who did he see? Well, what we do know is that F. Scott Fitzgerald stayed at the Grove Park Inn during the tragic, lonely final act of his jazz age story. He lived in rooms 441 and 443 during the summers of 1935 and 1936. This was a period defined by deep depression and creative decline. He came to Asheville solely to be near his wife Zelda, who was hospitalized nearby for severe mental illness. He spent hours isolated in his room, watching wealthy hotel guests arrive desperately searching for writing inspiration. He was battling severe alcoholism, and he tried to quit hard liquor by drinking up to 50 small beers a day. On his 40th birthday, a brutal newspaper expose revealed his struggles to the world, sending him into a dark spiral. The historic luxury stone resort offered peace to everyone but Fitzgerald, who was living through absolute financial and emotional ruin inside the walls. So do you think Tyler saw the ghost of F. Scott Fitzgerald, or possibly another soul who never decided to leave? Please leave your theories in the comments below. I will be sharing a link to the video with Tyler.
Prophetic dreams run in my mom's side of the family. I've talked about this before on my YouTube channel, but recently I had a really weird dream. Actually, I had 2 really weird dreams. First dream was more like a vision. Like as soon as I closed my eyes, I opened my eyes somewhere else. I was standing in a dark forest. I was walking through the dark forest when I spotted a child. She looked to be about between maybe 5 and 7. She wasn't speaking, but she was just standing there. She was wearing a white dress and she was staring what felt like into my soul. She had a message for me. Now, I can't remember everything, but I do remember her eyes, which is interesting because when I had the vision about the devil, that's specifically what I remembered too. Her eyes were some of the brightest blue I've ever seen. Anyways, back to the message. Oh, by the way, did I mention that this was a little ghost girl? Like, it was not a human. She was like almost transparent. This was a ghost. She didn't actually say the message out loud, but I could feel it in my soul and hear it in my mind. And the message that I'm referring to, we're about to start seeing a lot more of us, as in referring to ghosts. And that brings me to what happened about a week ago.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of the boy who wanted to sacrifice me. So growing up, there was this boy who'd always tell me that, listen, one day you're going to be my wife, one day you're going to be my wife, blah, blah, blah. And he was from a very wealthy family, and I would always think, dang, like, this boy's crazy. And then when we grew up, he started, like, asking me out, and he was like, remember when I told you you're going to be my wife? Like, I want to treat you right. And I thought he was being serious, y'all. Me and this boy started dating, whatever, and it was good initially. It was good. It was a nice relationship until he started forcing me now to go to his house. So at first, when he would ask me to go to his house, I'd be like, oh no, I don't want to go there. And then eventually got to a point where he'd be like, come man, let's go. And I'd be like, I don't want to go to your house. Why do you keep forcing me? Because I felt some type of way. One day I agreed to go to his house, and when I got there, I turned around when I got to the gate because I started getting scared for some reason, and I turned around. Eventually, he convinced me whatever and was like, no, please just come. I just want us to eat dinner, blah, blah, blah. When we get to the house, we go inside, whatever, and we're sitting down. And for some reason, I can see a shadow of something that's slithering on the roof. But I can't really tell what that is. So as he's making me food or whatever, while he was dishing up for me, I saw him sprinkle something in my food, in our food, but I only seen him sprinkle it in my food. When I asked him, he was like, oh, it's a spice, he already sprinkled it for himself. And I was like, already I'm uncomfortable. And I said, let me go to the bathroom. Can I please go to the bathroom? He was like, yeah, but you cannot use the bathroom that is downstairs. You can only use the one that's upstairs. And I was like, okay, cool, no problem. So as I'm walking upstairs to the bathroom, whatever, I see him leaving to go like talk on the phone. And for some reason, curiosity got the best of me, and I went downstairs again, and I started opening each and every single door, because there was something that I was just like, open the doors and see what's going on. I opened the first room, nothing. I opened the second room, nothing. I opened the bathroom, and there's black water. That water smells so terrible. It smelled like they put deep inside, but I'm not sure, because it doesn't smell like deep, but it was so black and it smelled so terrible. I was like, what the hell? I found that weird or whatever. And then as I was about to leave to open the next room, something starts slithering inside the water. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to put my hand inside there. I'm just going to let it be. I start walking to the next room. I open the next room. There is no bed. There is just a cupboard, right? It's not a cupboard, but a chest of drawer with 4 drawers. And then as I open the chest of drawers, there's a money, 200 rands, 100 rand notes. Hey, it was just money on money on money. And then I closed the door. I opened the third room, guys. There is a candle. One single black candle lit in the middle of the room. I closed the room because he was done with his phone call. And I was terrified after that. I walked back home. I walked back to where we were, and he asked me if I went to the toilet. I was like, yeah. And he was like, why? You look like you seen something that you shouldn't have seen. And I was like, why would you think that? He's like, no, the way like your face is, you might have seen something that you shouldn't have seen. And I was like, no, I didn't see anything. And I was like, I need to go to the bathroom again. And he's like, he just went. And I was like, I need to go to the bathroom again. So I go upstairs, guys. I go inside the bathroom, and I started feeling dizzy for some reason. I get inside the bathroom, and I started feeling dizzy before I could even pee. I felt dizzy, and I felt like I was on a faint. And then, guys, I think I fell down, and then I opened my eyes, and I saw nothing but red lights. Like, it was just flashing red lights, and there was blood on the wall, and the wall started feeling like they were caving in. And I started screaming. So I screamed. The guy comes upstairs, and he's like, are you okay? What's going on? I'm like, I don't know. So when he shakes me, that's when everything goes back to normal. I go downstairs. Hi guys, fine. I sat down, and as I was about to eat the food fell. Like, as he was about to like give me the food, actually, the plate fell on the floor. And I was like, hi man, you know what? If this is not a sign, if this is not a sign. Because how many signs have I seen inside this house? No ways, I'm leaving. I leave. I tell this guy, no, I need to go. He's like, please, let me cook for you again. I was like, I need to go. Like, I want to go home. Like, it's chill. I couldn't even think of a reason. I was like, no, I just want to go home. He's like, please don't leave. Let me make you. I was like,
take me home now. We walk outside or whatever, and the sun is out, and I'm just like, yo, finally I can go home. He's like, no, let me go get a jacket for you, it's cold. I'm like, no, it's not. He's like, he's really cold. He starts shivering, guys. He starts shivering. I'm like, what's going on with you? He's like, I need to go get a jacket. Should I get you as well? Because he's cold. I'm like, no, yo, guys. I'm like, I'm not cold, it's okay. Go inside, get yourself a jacket. Like, are you okay? He's like, yeah. He goes inside, guys, and he spends a good 30 minutes inside there. And as I get out of the car to go and get him, he comes out and he has like a scratch on his face. I'm like, what happened there? He's like, oh, I was doing something and I fell. And I was like, but like, it looks like something like scratched you, you know, like maybe, I wasn't insinuating that he was fighting with something or someone. I was like, it looks like you got scratched, because he says he fell. So if he had fell, it would have been like one dot. Do you understand? It's like, alright, cool, no problem. Fine. He goes, he comes inside the car. He's wearing nothing but winter clothes. He switches on the what do you call this? He switches on the engine. I'm like, what's going on with you? He switches on the engine, switches on the thingy. The whole time it's scorching, it's hot outside, guys. Switches on the engine, switches on the heater, man. That's what I'm trying to say. Gets inside the car. I mean, he was already inside the car. He starts drives me back home. He's like, listen, can you please come and see me tomorrow? I'm like, sure. He's like, okay, cool, I'll see you later. I'm like, okay, bye. I get out of the car, I leave, I wave, and then I go inside the house. As I get inside the house, I'm thinking, a lot of weird things happened, guys. Before I slept that day, I decided to pray. As I started to pray, guys, I fell asleep. After I prayed, right, I fell asleep, and then I had a dream, right, of myself again opening those doors. The first door, remember, was a bathroom, and I saw a black water inside, and the water was slithering, blah blah blah, right? I saw the snake, guys, in the freaking dream. I saw a snake in the freaking dream inside that water. And then I see myself closing what I did during the day. I opened inside the room where there was nothing but a chest of drawer, right? And I see that again, and there's another snake, right? But there's a bed this time. And I'm like, I never saw a bed was in there. Fine, I close that door, go inside the door where there is a candle, and I see a lot of people with on chains, and they're chained to that one candle, and they're just facing down. You can see that they are so sad and miserable. Then I finally closed the door, and then I go back in the dream, guys. Please track with me. I walk myself to the kitchen counter. I sit down, and I see this person sprinkling something that he got from one of the rooms there, right? When it was happening in reality, I did not see him go get anything, but in the dream, I saw him go get something, and then he sprinkled in my food, and then the food fell in that dream. Fine. I see myself letting him dish up for me again, guys. So now basically I'm seeing, how do I explain it? I'm seeing things for what they were in that dream. So I let him dish up for me. In reality, I did not let him dish up for me because I left, remember? So in the dream, I let him dish up for me again, and he sprinkles the same thing, guys. In that dream, I ate the food, and then I fainted. After fainting, I woke up. I didn't wake up. This person took me up the stairs, and he took me inside took me in his bed, into his bedroom or whatever, because he stayed with his parents, by the way. And guess what? He was trying to sleep with me, and I kept on telling him, no, you're not gonna do that, you're gonna do that. He's like, why won't you listen to me? Like, I want to make us money. If you become my wife, you won't be miserable, you'll be happy. Just let me do it. And I kept on being like, let you do what? No, I don't want you to let you do it. And eventually, guys, I escaped, and I found myself outside in the dream again. I went inside his car, and as he was cold, guys, remember, he was cold. It was because that snake that he keeps in the room was calling him inside, and it was manifesting in the spirit. Only he could see it, but in the dream I could see it as well. He walks inside the house. I walk inside the house with him, and he starts fighting with that snake-like thing. I don't know what the hell that was. He started fighting with him, and it scratched him on the face, just like how I saw him. And then eventually he went outside, and then I also went outside with him, and then he started driving, and then he accompanied me home. And when he got home, when I got out the car, I looked at him, and he looked so sad and miserable. And he told me how tired he was. And then I looked at him, and then I waved, and he just like kind of looked at me all sad. And then I closed the door. And then as I was walking inside my yard, I woke up, y'all. And I remember telling my aunt, because I remember I told her that I have an aunt who's a prophet, and I told her, and she was like, the reason why this boy wanted you to be his wife is because they can see some sort of power or luck from you. So they want to take that power, they want to take that luck from you, and they want to put it inside their family's wealth, because the snake chose you from the time that boy was born, and he started playing with you. The snake chose you because it wants you to be his wife. That's why he's forcing you. Even in that dream, if you had allowed him to sleep with you, you were going to wake up and you were going to fall in love with him miraculously. So she was like, I need to stay away from that boy because his family is dealing in witchcraft stuff, like for them to become rich, they basically use people's souls, and they have a snake, whatever. That candle that was tied to people, whatever, those are people's souls inside that other room where there's a snake. That's the snake that makes money for them. And they don't have just one snake. They are very greedy people. They have more than one snake. And I was like, yo, like, dang, I never spoke to that boy again. I'm sorry, like, I just blocked him out of the blue. I see him from time to time, and he keeps on telling me I'm gonna be his wife, and I'm like, sure. He asked for my number, I give it to him, and then when I get home, I block him.
Why are more and more young Americans starting to believe that we're actually living inside a giant experiment? Recently, one man even quit his high-paying job because he believes he's found the evidence to prove it. It all started just a few months ago. The man graduated from one of the world's top universities and landed a finance job that many people would dream of. But then, he publicly admitted that throughout college, he relied on AI to complete almost every essay he turned in, yet still graduated with straight A's. That experience led him to question whether modern education is really teaching people to think creatively, or simply teaching them how to succeed within the system. As he continued searching for answers, he claimed to discover something he calls metadata. According to him, every person's full name and date of birth contain hidden information. He believes this isn't just a collection of numbers, but a kind of encoded blueprint that reveals the true purpose each person was meant to fulfill. In his view, every human being is born with a mission, but modern society has caused most people to forget what that mission is. The deeper he explored this idea, the more extraordinary his theory became. He now claims that the world we live in isn't actually reality, but part of a 300,000-year-long experiment created by an advanced civilization. Every person on Earth is a different trial, and what he calls metadata is a clue intentionally left behind for us to discover. To prove that he truly believes all of this, he quit his finance career, announced that he no longer wanted the university degree he earned, and declared that he would dedicate his life to building an entirely new society. He even says he plans to run for president of the United States in 2040 to create what he calls America 2. At this point, these ideas remain his personal beliefs and have not been supported by scientific evidence. But what's surprising is how much attention they've received across American social media. His videos have sparked a much bigger question. If every person really does have a purpose that was written long before they were born, are we truly living by our own free will, or are we simply carrying out the next stage of an experiment that began long ago?
So, quick story time. Anyone that watched my live the other night, we were at the old Blue River Cemetery. It is super, super active, super haunted. If you were in my live, you saw all of the shadow play that was going on. It was crazy, crazy. So anyways, ever since then, had some little weird things go on around the house, but I just had a really, really creepy thing happen. So I was over at my mom's house. I had took her over some tomatoes and some corn from the garden. And anyways, I come back over and the door was locked. Well, I knew I didn't lock it behind me. My husband's home, no worries. So I knock on the door. I don't hear him come to the door. So I try the door again. Locked, completely locked. So I knocked on the door. I said, Stan, open the door. Nothing. So by this time I'm getting a little peeved. So I take the door and I'm just like, is it locked or not? It's locked. What am I going to do? It's friggin' burning up out here. So I knocked again and I said, Stan, open the door. All of a sudden I reached down and I felt the doorknob turn in my hand. I was like, well, finally. So I opened the door and come in. No husband. Nothing. And I'm like, he would not have ran in the bathroom real quick. He couldn't have made it back to the bedroom in time. So I walk through the house. I go back to the bedroom. He's in bed, asleep. So I think something followed us home the other night. So yeah, kind of creepy. I think I'm going to get some sage out. But anyways, I just had to give you a little paranormal story time. He's still not feeling too good. We went out the other night and did that live. And then I don't know if some of this is like allergy related or what. But anyways, we may go back out tonight. I've got a thing at the church. We're doing a community dinner for the kids. And I've got some goodies for them. So I won't be home to probably 8 from that. But see how he's feeling. If he's feeling okay, we may do a live again tonight. So, all right. Y'all have a good day.
This girl emailed me and said that she was chased by something that looked like a demon in the Appalachian Mountains and ended up in the hospital because of it. So we're gonna call this person Jamie. Every summer, Jamie would go visit her grandmother in the Appalachian Mountains. So when Jamie was 13 years old, summer came around and she went to her grandmother's house like she always did. So she goes to the Appalachian Mountains, and as soon as she walks up to her grandmother's house, her grandmother is sitting on the porch, and her grandmother immediately tells her to go to her grandpa's house. Now, her grandmother and her grandfather were divorced, but they only lived about 500, 600 feet away from each other, so she was able to walk over to her grandfather's house. Her grandmother wanted her to bring a stack of papers to her grandfather's house. So she grabs the stack of papers from her grandmother and she goes to walk to her grandfather's house. As she's walking to her grandfather's house, she is kind of walking through the woods, and she said that at first it was okay, but then suddenly she started to get this feeling of dread. It was pretty heavy on her chest, and she felt like somebody was watching her. Now, she had walked to her grandfather's house before several times, and she didn't really like walking in these woods. They kind of freaked her out, and she would get this feeling of dread a lot, but she said that this was the worst feeling that she had ever gotten. But she decides that she's going to shrug it off, because she's like, I've had this feeling before. It's fine. I'm just going to get to my grandfather's house. It's not that far away, so she continues to walk. So she continues to walk. She gets a bit further, and suddenly she hears this horrifying screeching scream. She said that it sounded a lot like a bobcat, but just a lot deeper. Like the tone was much lower. It didn't sound very natural, but in her head she's thinking it's just a bobcat, so she just continues to walk. She said that continuing to walk after hearing the scream was one of the biggest mistakes that she has ever made, and she wishes to this day that she did not make that mistake. So she continues walking. She's about 500 feet away at this point when she hears her grandmother call her. She doesn't think that this is that weird because she is only about 500 feet away, like I said, and her grandmother could have easily caught up to her because she is a very slow walker, or was a very slow walker at this time, she said. So she hears her grandmother's voice, but the only thing that made her think twice about it is it sounded different. The voice again sounded lower. She also said that it didn't sound exactly like her grandmother's voice. It almost sounded like something else was trying to mimic her grandmother's voice and just got very close to it, but again, it was lower, it was deeper. So she's looking around the trees and she's like, what? Like, what do you need? She's thinking her grandmother's out in the woods acting weird, and she hears a branch snap behind her. So she quickly turns around because she's on high alert at this point and she doesn't see anything. She turns back around and she continues to walk. She's getting scared at this point because all these things are kind of not adding up. I mean, one thing would have been okay, but multiple things like this, it's getting to her at this point. So she's kind of walking a little bit faster when suddenly she feels something shove her and she falls on a rock. She said as soon as she hit the ground, she got this feeling of dread like she has never felt before in her entire life. And suddenly she cannot move. She can't move her body. So she's laying on the ground and she physically is paralyzed. She cannot move. So she's scanning the forest with her eyes at this point, trying to figure out what's going on when she hears laughter. And she said that this laughter did not sound like a person. Now, I emailed her back to ask her exactly what the laughter sounded like, and she didn't get back to me. So all I know is it did not sound human. So she tries to scan her eyes where that laughter is coming from, and she is petrified at this point because she's frozen. She cannot move. She's literally paralyzed on the ground in the Appalachian Mountains, and she's hearing all of this stuff when suddenly she sees something out of the corner of her eye. She said she saw something that was extremely tall, very thin. It had a smile so wide it almost seemed unreal to her, like she didn't understand how something could smile that big. Its teeth were black, like pitch black, and super sharp and long. She said that they looked so sharp and long that it looked like if it closed its mouth, its teeth would go right through its gums. She's laying there on the ground, petrified, literally thinking she's not going to make it. She said she could not believe what she was seeing. She said the moment she thought this thing was going to attack her, she all of a sudden could move again, and she jumped up and she just starts running towards her grandfather's house. She said as soon as she thought that it was gonna be the end for her, all of a sudden she could move and she just bolted out of there. She starts running towards her grandfather's house. As she's running towards her grandfather's house, she can hear this thing like galloping behind her. It is keeping pace with her. It is chasing her at this point. So she finally gets to a point where she sees her grandfather's house and the door is open, almost as if her grandfather knew she was going to arrive in such a way. She said she finally gets to the door. She slams it as hard as she can and she just starts crying. She's telling her grandfather what happened and she's hysterically crying. She's shaking. She is afraid that he isn't going to believe her, and all of a sudden they both just hear this shriek come from outside. She said it was the last scream that she has ever heard from this thing. She said after this that her grandfather drove her to her grandmother's house and that she stayed at her grandmother's house for a week and would not come out of her grandmother's house for an entire week. Her mom actually had to come get her early. She had to come drive to the Appalachian Mountains and come pick her up because she was too traumatized to stay there. The issue is that she was so traumatized that she stopped eating and she stopped sleeping. And this got so bad that she actually ended up having to go to the hospital because of it. She eventually got out of the hospital and she recovered, but she said that this was the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to her and that she will never forget it. To this day, she thinks about it. So what do you guys think about this story? This is really weird because, and one of the reasons I told this story is because the third story, I think it was the third story I ever told. It might have been like, it was in the very beginning of me ever telling stories. Another girl experienced something like this, and I think it was in the Appalachian Mountains. I'll have to retell the story because it was a good story and I haven't told it for a year. And sometimes I'll retell stories that I've told a long time ago so that my new followers can hear them. And because sometimes, you forget stories. I don't like to do it often because I don't really like to retell stories on my account. I like them to be new, but I think it'd be interesting to retell that story because it's very similar to this one in ways where I've never heard of anyone seeing like a in the forest, and she described this as that, and so did the other girl that described, and it sounded very similar. I think they had similar features. I'll have to go back and watch the video, but it's weird that two different people sent me a story that was so similar. You guys remember that story that I'm talking about? It was like, I remember it was around Christmas time. I was wearing a red sweater that said like Mary on it or something like that. I don't know why I remember that. I had sunglasses on my head. I remember that. Anyways, what do you guys think of the story? What do you think it was? Drop in the comments. Drop your thoughts, opinions, suggestions. But as always, please be respectful. One more thing before we do the shout outs. I'm going to make a separate video about this tomorrow. I'm going to pin it at the top of my page. Just like I'm going to basically just tell you guys like what this account is about, what kind of stories I tell, things that aren't acceptable here and are acceptable here, etc. That type of video should be pinned at the top of my page, but I'm just going to tell you guys one more time. I don't tell AI generated stories. I do run your stories through ChatGPT, especially if I think that they are AI generated, and I can tell I've never been wrong. I've never been wrong. Please do not send me AI generated stories. Not only are you wasting my time, but it's dishonest, and I do not tell fake stories on this account. Obviously, I cannot confirm or deny whether any of these stories are true, right? But if I know that they're not true, I am not going to tell them. Also, guys, please tell me your age when you send me your stories, because if you're not 18, I can't tell your stories. And if I do accidentally tell your story and you're underage, I do have to private your story. Okay? I'll put that in the video too. And I won't rant about this in another video again. So I'm sorry, except for the video that I post about this. Okay, now we're going to go on the shout outs. Thanks for listening. Hope Lizzie Bet. Number one, you said that you heard a voice in one of my videos, and I would like you to tag me in that video, please, because I would like to hear what you're talking about. It kind of freaks me out. But you also said that my stories are like therapy to you, and I love that so much. Thank you for saying that. Thank you so much for listening to my stories and for commenting and for being kind and for being a part of my community and supporting me. You have no idea how much it means to me and how much you guys mean to me and how much you mean to me as an individual. So thank you so much for your support, and please tag me in that video. I love you. Bailey Joe Howell, you said that you binge watch my videos while you're working and stuff, and I love that so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting me and being a part of my community. By the way, you're from Utah, and I was born in Salt Lake City. I lived there till I was 14. So that's interesting. I miss it there. It's such a good state. And thank you so much for being kind, and thank you just for liking my stories enough to binge them. It means so much to me, and you mean so much to me as an individual, and I hope you know how much I appreciate you and your support. I love you. And with that being said, my name is Kaisa, and I tell your paranormal experiences on here, or ones that you recommend to me every single night. So if you're into that, hit that follow button, and I just need you to do 3 things for me. One of those, keep sending me your scary stories. Have a safe night. And what's the third one? Say it with me. Have a spooky night. Love you so much, my spooky babies. I'll see you.
Easily the most terrifying story of one of my experiences, y'all. I live in Canada, and this story had me not wanting to go outside. Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepy Pasta, series where I crochet something creepy and talk about something even creepier. Let's get into it. This story may be short, or it may be drawn out. I am recounting these events as I type, as it was honestly one of the most horrifying things I have experienced, and it brings me genuine stress to think about. This happened maybe 2 to 3 years ago. I live in southern West Virginia and have for my entire life. The woods and mountains surround every direction you look, and nighttime is a darkness that you can never dream of unless experienced. I was with a friend, I'll call him Mark. Mark was at my house one evening doing the usual things, watching UFC, playing Xbox, etc. It was extremely late when we finally got bored and decided to go for a walk on a nearby trail to smoke a joint. This is not a particularly long trail, but it is very dense in the woods that surround it, and it is easy to get freaked out when thinking of your surroundings. We finally get to about halfway into the trail, about 30 minutes in, where we stop, pack our joint, and stand on the trail to chill and talk. The forest is very alive tonight. There are always noises in the woods, but the amount of animal activity for the time was unsettling. At this point, it was probably past 1 a.m. This was strange and kind of eerie, but not alerting, as any sort of predatory animal in the area may cause a disturbance. We finish smoking and continue our walk when almost immediately the forest falls dead quiet. If we know anything about Appalachia, we know that that is not a good sign. If you know anything about being in the woods, you know that's not a good sign. And as soon as the forest goes quiet, there is a voice. It almost sounds like a mocking humanoid voice, shaky and uncertain. Almost like an old children's toy, like the ones with the crackly speakers and robotic voice, if you know what I mean. This immediately set us off. We bolt directly down the opposite length of the trail, but the sound does not gain distance. It doesn't get closer per se, but no matter how far we ran down the trail, this eerie voice remains the same volume, going over and over with no quieting or stopping. At this point, I'm convinced that we are in genuine danger, something I have felt very few times. Finally, after sprinting for who knows how long, we exit the trail, gasping for breath and almost at the verge of tears of how frightening this was. We begin to exit the trail, and about 5 minutes from the exit, there's a bone-shaking, heart-stopping, murderous scream from directly behind us. You know what it meant?
So listen to me.
You find a rope by the side of the road and curiosity takes over and you follow it. Then you realise it's leading you straight to a dead body. It was the 11th of July 1990 in San Diego. The woman was having a very normal morning. She was just making her way to work when she spotted a rope at the side of the road. Out of curiosity, she was like, I wonder where this leads to and why this is here. So she kind of followed it as like a bit of a trail. She followed it down a hillside and then came across a woman's dead body. The victim was in an absolutely terrible state, and this woman couldn't honestly believe what she was seeing, so she obviously rang police straight away. They took the mystery woman away to try and see what the hell had happened to her and try and identify her. The autopsy showed that obviously an absolute monster had done this to her because she'd been beaten and strangled with that very same rope that the woman found. And get this, it was far from a quick death. This monster strangled her for over 5 minutes. You know how much of an agonizing death that would have been. The investigators worked out that the victim was 47-year-old Margaret Jackson. She was a mum, and an amazing mum to 3 boys. Boys that would never get to see their mum again. And the most terrifying thing for the locals in all of this was that they had no idea who did it. No leads, no suspects. Some terrifying, dangerous murder was just out there free, and he could kill again. It felt like nobody was safe. The police had collected DNA from underneath Margaret's fingernails, but this was way before technology had advanced like it is today, and quite honestly, it was kind of useless at the time. And this case very quickly went cold to the horror of the locals. They just had to live in fear. It was slowly killing this family that nobody was held accountable. That was until 2018, when DNA was submitted into the database. Now, this DNA had been submitted due to a drug trafficking conviction. They were like, oh my god, this is a match. Whoever committed this crime is the killer. It was 65-year-old Randall Euler. And not only was he a brutal murderer, he was also just not very clever. Because while police were collecting evidence in this case, he was in prison and he was just chatting away to his fellow inmate about the crime. In one conversation, he was like, yeah, I'm a bit worried because the victim actually scratched me when I killed her. In another, he was like, yeah, I slung her down the side of a hill. But the issue with him speaking to this inmate so openly about the crime he'd committed was that this wasn't an inmate after all. This was an undercover police officer. And they'd been recording every single thing he said. So Randall, time is up. It was actually just very, very recently that he was convicted of first-degree murder and given 35 years. I guess we still don't really know the motive. Why would he commit such a brutal crime? For more cases like this, check out my podcast, The Bourne Investigation.